There. Extra zeal. No. Great. How are you?
My mother was well, I'm just happy that kids to see how the sauce is. Yeah, no worries. You're on the run game. Yeah, no problem. Thank you. Is there anything that I
It's all Mason.
I would love some. I know. That would be great. I looked over and I saw the net. Yeah. Most of the time.
No, I stood on the sidewalk for the window. Yeah.
See, I don't remember which brought chocolates. No, I'm fine.
No, it's fine.
Thanks for taking that.
I just got back. I just got back.
Set the side comments down somewhere, and I don't know where I set them down, so they're not in here. I just washed my hands. They're upstairs somewhere, sitting on something. Oh, they're sitting in the kitchen.
Like, if you know, if you that has nothing else. Or, one guy is like, 20 different choices.
There's architects of record.
Pick one, you got it, So, I'm sorry.
But I'm also taking. Everybody's partnering with so much. Should be really consistent. Especially here. Maybe it'll be fine in but Charleston, there's a lot of twists and turns here. So we did a project.
So I need to know anyway. Well, I just wanted to.
Don't ever worry about that. I just know that I'm honest with you.
Oh, we understand why you're the only plan. We didn't know much. It was so much fun. Everyone that comes around here, they basically come from boat builders. That's right. And so they do good stuff. That's right.
So I'm looking upon it. It's a 7-day
All right. James. Sharon tonight?
Yeah, I'm happy to switch with you right this very minute.
Hey, Lawrence. How are you?
Thank you.
I just got a call from BAR Small, so I can't do tomorrow. I guess it's the time of year. No one's on. Same. We were out yesterday. So, much transparency. Totally happy about it. I'll take it over.
Oh, God. Things just get more and more and more hairy all the time.
Thanks for joining us tonight.
Finally get to sit on the same desk.
Well, much more fun here than smaller, isn't it?
Yeah, it's small. Hey,
No, no, what I'm saying, much more fun here than small.
oh, yeah, small. I think small's easy. These are harder projects.
Are they about the same?
Well,
Because I think of all the stuff when I was in the city. All the small stuff. Dwight, how you doing? So your students are here? They are
we
here.
have enough controversy.
You're right on.
I just saw her. She's gonna teach them. She's great. Wow, she's good. She's crazy and good. Yeah. You know, I always felt kind of weird, you know. So when we had that sit down, we're all there. And part of it was so I like, you know, like, we used to make things that listen.
Oh, you're
I'm sure it's supposed to be. They said I didn't do it. All right.
I'm sorry. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I would know, I would bring that bottle to the trash can.
That might look a little weird, it's just bottles of wine everywhere. I mean, I might be tempted to pop it open.
Make the meeting go faster.
That will stop by next week. Okay?
Well, that sounds great. You don't have to. I mean,
I
I'd
think you
love
will
to.
enjoy it just about.
Oh, I know.
It's from.
Okay. The family vineyard? The family vineyard?
No. What do you mean?
Oh, I don't know.
No. They're very protected by government.
Oh, yeah?
You know. I don't know.
Good afternoon.
Special in the world.
Oh, yeah?
It depends.
So welcome to the April 12th, 2023 VAR Large Meeting. The Crawltrack Public Meeting Room at 2 George Street. My name is James Metters, and I'll be serving as chairman in Mr. Robinson's absence. The other board members present this afternoon are Jay White, who will recuse himself on item number 3 and 4, Luda Subcheck, Seton Brown, and Eddie Bello. City staff present are Tori Parrish, Lawrence Courtney, and Linda Bennett. Applicants have been required to submit any documents in advance of the meeting. Staff will control the slide presentation that includes everything submitted by the applicant by the deadline in accordance with submittal requirements. Or Lawrence has just told me there is a clicker on the stand which you can also use. is being recorded and live streamed in the City of Charleston Public Meeting Channel on YouTube. Your appearance here is your consent to be recorded. The order of the meeting will be as follows. Introduction, overview by the project, city staff, to the board and for the public. Applicant presentation, a 10-minute time limit or as determined by the chair, and with any questions of the applicant by the board or staff. Any and all presenters should clearly state their names for the record. Persons affiliated with project, be it owners, developers, designers, consultants, should speak during this portion rather than public comment. Followed by public comment. All applications are part of a public meeting. Written public comments were due by noon the day prior to the meeting, and any received comments have been transmitted to and considered by board members. Written comments will not be read aloud during the meeting unless requested by a member of the board and with the permission of the chair. Any member of the public who wishes to be heard in person on an agenda item at this time is requested to state their name and address for the record, and to be reminded there is a 2-minute time limit for these remarks unless extended by the chair. Applicant does not respond to comments made during this comment portion. City staff comments and recommendations, and applicant response and clarification to public comments and city staff comments and recommendations. This response time has a 5-minute limit, and the applicant does not have to use the applicant response period if they don't feel it's necessary. This will be followed by the board discussion and vote. The applicant presentation is over and public comment is closed. Applicant may clarify inaccurate information when recognized by the chair by raising a hand and waiting to be called upon. Board members will be polled by the chairperson for comments and for their vote on the motion. The chair will reread a motion verbatim, and the board member making the motion should correct the chair if he has not reread the motion accurately. Once the motion is in proper order and seconded, each member, when voting, should respond yea in favor or nay not in favor. Results will be posted on the city website at www.charleston-sc.gov/BAR. Item number 2 has been deferred from the agenda. And as a reminder, please turn off all cell phones and other potentially disruptive devices. Please limit your comments to architecture only. Comments related to zoning such as parking, traffic, and lot coverage, as well as livability department concerns, are not the purview of this board and cannot be voiced here. Thank you. Item number 1 on our agenda is approval of the minutes from March 22nd, 2023.
Motion to approve.
Motion's been,
I will second that.
motion been made and seconded. Is all those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Item number 2, 122 Buchanan Street. Joy?
All right, item number 2, 122 Buchanan Street is being deferred. Item number 3.
Item number 3.
Item number 3 is 173 Ashley Avenue. This is the MUSC MRE building. The building is, the existing building is not rated. It's in the High District 85-125 in the Old City District. The applicant is requesting conceptual approval for expansion of a mechanical building on MUSC campus. And context slides, the red box is showing you the proposed expansion, and then the portion just to the south, page south of that is the existing MRE building. This is connected to the dental school is north and the basic science building to the south. The dental school to the north, you can see the project and the beyond there. Center of this image. And beyond in this image. Okay, thanks.
And it is indeed a methodical building. So it sounds funny to say, but this is a beautiful piece of it. My name is Jay White. I'm the principal of the OER architecture, presenting on behalf of MUSC. And this is in addition to a building that was built about 22 years ago. It houses chillers that supply chilled water and steam for several buildings in this quadrant of campus, and it's being expanded to accommodate 2 new buildings, one of which we've already reviewed and approved at conceptual level. Next one you'll see in just a moment. I will move quickly through this. And while I'm flipping through, I'll note that the building in question, this is B Street, this is President Street. The College of Health Professions building that was recently approved right here, the next agenda item is this thing. It is not actually a black building. And then talking about this little wood frame piece right here on the model, tucked back into the core of the block. So this site is part of the original footprint of the Porter Military Academy. We always include these same boards and timelines to give some sense of the history of the site, because we feel that's never not important. But this building right now is sitting in the middle of 20th and 21st century redevelopment of the block to suit the needs of the Medical University campus. See the building tucked in right here. At present, it's already fully behind the dental sciences building on B Street here. And compositionally, materially, it's a beautiful building. I was very proud of it. The project architect that worked on it is actually now an MUSC employee, and he was very interested in what we're doing. And for good reason, the material palette, the facades, it works pragmatically, it works architecturally, and our intention is to just simply expand that language. We're dealing with a building that's not really historic by any measure, but it is valuable in our view. And so if you break down the materials and the patterns, this is the composition you get, and we're really just going to mirror that over and create one more bay. There'll be some form of architectural joint between the two, because we're actually building a new building. We'll have to detail that. I'm sure there's a staff comment in that regard. We're extending its footprint by about 30. So these are the plans. It's 3 stories with a chiller platform that's open to the air. That's all the louvers that you see in the composition. The materials that are proposed: cast stone, brick masonry, aluminum louvers, glass block, which is super rare now, but I love it. Here you can see the existing on the left, the new on the right section. Expression of the material palette that's expected. We're going to have to fully clean the existing building. It's 20 years old, so it's got some fading, it's got some chalking, and we're probably going to be, as we see through the design, matching the colors as they exist today, not what was there when it was built, because otherwise it's going to get really mismatched. And that's it. I'll answer any questions you have.
Is there any question, Eddie?
I do. So Jay, are all the materials that you're proposing pretty much the same as what's there now? Just yeah.
Any public comment?
All right, staff comments. Number 1, the proposed expansion extends the architectural language, patterns, materials, and finishes of the existing building, which exceeded expectations for a mechanical services structure. The joint should be quiet but visible is unnoticeable. And 2, an overall cleanup and restoration of finishes in the existing building is advised when the expansion is constructed. And we are recommending conceptual approval with board and staff comments. We would be comfortable with final details to staff.
I know you don't have any comments, additional comments that the city staff.
I'm comfortable with anything.
Board comments, motion.
Are they public?
I'm sorry, I thought I asked for.
Oh, you did? Oh, you did. I'm sorry. Well, I'll start then.
Yeah.
I was messing up your chair. No, I mean, I think it's a good design. I think that's the way you should handle it. That's why I asked about the materials. And I was going to say I'm definitely comfortable with how the staff just basically replicate these in there. And I I've always admired this building. It's a great one. I know architect. Liked it. You can't see it very well.
See?
Cynthia?
Luda? So, if I'm understanding this right, you kind of put that in form of a motion, which
Sure.
was conceptual approval with final approval and final details to staff.
And picking up staff comment about some kind of subjoin.
It's made a motion for approval with conceptual approval with final approval and final details to staff, including staff comments. Is there a second? Luda, second. How do you vote, Dave?
Yeah, in favor.
Yay in favor.
Luda? And I vote in favor also, so it's unanimous approval. Thank you. Okay. The next item on our agenda, 41.
41B Street is the MUSC College of Medicine. This one is new construction, District A5125, Old City District. The applicant is requesting conceptual approval for the new construction of a 7-story building for MUSC College of Medicine, which will include office and support spaces. And with context, this is in the same block up on B Street, with this one is in the northeast corner of President B of that block. This is the actual location. This is the building that was approved for demolition 3 weeks ago. And this is the historic, the historic wall that will be part of the next application.
Great, thank you all. Jay White again with Leolio Architecture. I'll start by acknowledging that this is the first permanent home for MUSC's college. I've heard it said that y'all had a building before, but I don't believe it. This is the first one, at least within any living memory. But in order to understand the importance of this building to the university, we have several people from the university here. They're not going to say a word. But we've got David in charge, who's the chief facilities officer for Jennifer Knoll, who's the assistant dean, chief of staff for the medical universities for medicine. And then Jan Buffington, who is, we call her the space czar. She's the director of academic space utilization at the college. Also here, Will Skelton from SLAM Collaborative out of Atlanta. We've been working together as a big group. And Mason and Dan are here, Leolio and a bunch of folks that we've been teaching this semester along with Eddie. So this whole section, they need to just keep it on.
You've been teaching Eddie too, though.
I can't teach Eddie. So we'll move through this quickly, but Mr. Chair, we may need another 5-7 minutes additional. 1,000 gross square feet of academic office space. The site is basically the same site as we've dealt with before. I will come right out of the gate by acknowledging that this is the current home of the MUSC Urban Farm. That's been consistently discussed during the development phases for this project because that's been a beloved portion of the campus, and MUSC is committed to finding some place to integrate that program elsewhere on the campus, and we're doing our part to preserve the landscape features that are there. I'll explain that in a minute. Y'all are familiar with the campus, so I just move through all those other images. But in terms of precedents, there are 2 things that we wanted to talk about. One is that with the College of Charleston Science Center, which we did about a decade ago, actually 20 years ago, we understand that there's a special need to be conscientious when you're building the edge. And this is a very mixed portion of the city. There's a lot of scales. There's a lot of diffusion to the urban grid. We're dealing with that. There's also a desire to express the importance of the program that happens here, like we did at Bassett Hall. And then in a modern academic setting, there's an expression of making it inviting and active and fade-lit. And you'll see that obviously in the design, I think, and then embedding it within a natural setting, like SLAM did at a little school in Texas. This is a Part T is the program on the first floor. Most of this building is an even mix between academic spaces at all scales and then office spaces, which made it really challenging over the months we've been working on it to compose facades that suit all of those local programs. All these red arrows we'll get into start to talk about the site, but this section is diagrammatic and is intended to show you how all of these different uses stack up because it makes a difference to the architecture. The first two floors of this building actually have very tall floor heights, and it's important to note that. First floor to second floor, floor to floor is 24 feet. And that's because very large spaces that inhabit the first floor, they need that ceiling height for the volume of space and for appropriate sightlines within the academic setting. Second floor also is another 22 feet, and then we settle down to something that's a little more typical as we get into smaller educational spaces in the workplace. All the mechanical equipment in this building is located on the seventh floor within a mechanical zone that occupies about half of that. So getting into the site plan a little bit. So again, orientation across the top of the screen is B, and down the left-hand margin is President Street. We have the Vince Mosley building not long for this world, the urban farm here, future site of the College of Health Professions here, and then these three trees, which are notable within the landscape of the urban farm. Since MUSC, and this is down in Purview, thought it might be public contact. Since MUSC considered itself labeled as the Arboretum, we're going to spade out these trees and relocate them. The new development, 28-inch oak is right here, moves to the front entry. 25-inch oak is right about here, moves to this corner, and then there's a 24.5-inch oak right there. This is the footprint of the proposed College of Medicine. This represents a breezeway at the ground level. There is a tangle web of underground utilities in this site, but that's not really what dominated the site planning concept for it. We really wanted to focus on a proper engagement of the streets and then the appropriate creation of the courtyard between Chip D, as they call it, our building. One of the most successful attributes we think of the site plan is that it preserves and enhances all the pedestrian circulation paths that exist within the site today. There's a strong flow of pedestrians from the President Street Garage down diagonally and then southward in this mall here. There's a strong east-west flow through here that's preserved and even enhanced. And also, more pragmatically, things like fire lanes that have to be developed here and here that have an impact on the architecture of large high-rise buildings. See, the trees have been relocated. Another thing that's worth pointing out is that we're dealing with a lot of issues with topography and flood. This is not a flat site. It actually has quite a lot of topography. And our buildings are sitting at a design flood elevation of about 15, whereas the rest of the site is around 10. That means that our design flood, our first floor elevation for this building, and consequently for this one too, is right about the top of that wall, that historic wall that was originally part of Fort Military Academy. So we're having to deal with how to enhance the space between the building and the wall, which brings this whole site, and then also what to do with the wall itself. And I'll show you another drawing in a minute. But we're making modifications to widen the wall to accommodate fire trucks here, create new entrances for handicapped access here, create new entrances for a stairway here, but then also using the surplus bricks to repair the wall and then close in some of the openings that are no longer necessary. As you can see here, this is the existing B Street facade. We're removing masonry here and here for that fire truck access. We're putting it back here and here where Vince Mosley had poked holes that are no longer needed. Then on President Street, creating new entrances here, here, and see pilasters at a lot of the new entrances. That's because this is only a double wide wall and it really needs anchor any openings. And a lot of the bricks we're taking out, we're actually taking out more area, we're putting back, we need those bricks because the wall was repaired, generally speaking. Being has to act as a retaining wall in some areas that needs to be protected, with no cracks and structural deficiencies. Here, we let Ali Will take over on talk about the building.
One Will Stelton with SLAM. We're pleased to be working with Jay and Michael and the rest of the building team on this prestigious job for the College of Medicine. We're going to walk you through the architectural design. Feel free to stop me at any time. As Jay mentioned, on the first floor, there are some very large scale, large format active learning spaces. Specifically, this space you see upper center, but also a tiered TBL, we call it, team-based learning lecture hall, which will step down. One of the things we're really excited about is the cafe space, which will be out here and will be a shared amenity among all the buildings in the area, and health professions are excited about sharing in that as well. And then the main diagonal that sweeps through the building, the circulation that you see in the yellow there, really starts to collect, sort of celebrate what is more ceremonial entrance at the northeast corner. But there really are a lot of different ways folks will approach this building, and we're trying to allow that to happen with multiple entry points from different directions. We welcome them into the building. Quickly through the floor plans, second floor is more active learning space, one major space here with a upper partition that will allow that space to have some flexibility. An open stair for 3 floors that'll start to allow the public deeper up into the building. And then you start to see that there are more specialized spaces for the College of Medicine as we work our way up. More student focus on the 3rd floor, and then more faculty focus floors above, with the dean on level 5 and the rest of the administration. And then more offices on 6 and 7. The floor plates are a little bit smaller as they step back, and then mechanical penthouse on 7. Here you start to see some of the context, but also the elevation along President, which I think is really important as you start to see how bioengineering, College of Health Professions, and College of Medicine work together. And we started to repeat some of the materiality and definitely some of the fenestration of those buildings to create some cohesion along the street. But college was also interested in making a bit of a statement and anchoring the corner of campus. And so a little bit more of a sense of verticality at the end there that can really mark that corner as something special for the college. Start to see the north elevation, and along B Street, you see the verticality of those openings. And this is that ceremonial entrance that we talked about that shares some commonalities with the dental building next door. You'll see that a lot more in 3 dimensions, and you can see it on the model as well. See which way the model is oriented. So you can see with this chamfered corner that dental has, that's been repeated in a way on our building. What we're trying to do there is create a gateway. We know that term gateway is overused, but in this case, really creating a gateway makes a lot of sense for the university with a main circulation path that ties to the main quad here. But also there's an idea that the university may want to do something with this property across the street eventually, and this would allow that to happen. Building, as it moves to the inside of the courtyard, it opens up a little bit more and has a good bit more glass. This is that cafe that we mentioned and some of the student spaces. So we'll really look out on that shared courtyard with health professions. So not only looking out, but looking in, we think will be quite active and spectacular space. Another version of the section to work up through the building. Cross section with the courtyard shown to the right beyond. Quite a few sections in there. Now we're starting to get into a little more of the 3-dimensionality, and we wanted to run our initial take on the materials past you. It was a little early typically, but we thought since we get into some thought, we'd love to get your feedback on it. Our thought here is that with the sort of rusticated historic wall here, that we felt like to relate to that with what we're looking at as vertically oriented terracotta, it's a little bit of the coloration, but to do it in a modern material. So it's clearly a modern building, a new building, but related to that brick wall in a way that showed some commonalities there. And as the building steps up, we're looking at a vertically oriented gray brick. So we're using some of the materials that you see elsewhere on the campus, not as much metal panel as around there, but using them in kind of a different modern way that we think could be quite striking for the college. Here you see, this is the main corner, the northwest corner. So President Street is here. This is the future health professions here, not built yet. University, I believe, does not own this. This is student housing and parking over here. That's why we sort of felt like orienting our entrance here with the common shared space and entry with downhill made a lot of sense. You can see that the building does step back as it works its way up. We've got quite a few canopies and sunshades on the dean's level, especially. The administration was really interested in having some space where they could gather outside, so you'll see several of those. We're also still working on the design of what the main canopy wants to be at this location. Jay mentioned our floor height. We do need to get up about 5 feet from the grade up to our entry, so working hard with our landscape architects to design that in a way that's very elegant and allows folks who are disabled to proceed up in a similar way. And this is a view down that corridor between the two buildings, looking south back to campus. This is where we're saving as much of this brick wall as we can coming to this point. So working on how to create that entry and get folks up both ramps and stairs to the main entry there. That's what we're calling our ceremonial entry. And then we felt like this was quite an important corner to solve as well. The health professions building, as you see on the right, is vertically oriented. At least in their last go around, they had some vertical sunshades. You can check in with them and see if that is still happening. We felt like having the vertical sunshades on our piece helped accentuate that verticality we talked about earlier. And because their building steps back a bit because of some electrical underground, we felt like this corner was quite prominent and important. So we made that more like a lantern element that would really light up nicely at night. And then this is literally the Dean's Terrace up on the 5th floor. So it's starting to accentuate that with both the brick and the canopy. This is between the two buildings, and so we've got a pretty narrow passage through there and a bridge that connects the two buildings. But we've spent a lot of time trying to make sure that folks are welcome coming in on grade, with a gentle slope up and turning the corner. Some sort of targeted openings in the brick wall to make sure that folks can get in from multiple directions. And then once you make your way through there and underneath the connecting bridge, kind of hit the oasis point between the buildings. It will be a very urban condition. These buildings are 125 feet tall. And so for that reason, we've started to step the building down in massing, not only on the exterior, but on the interior, so that it feels a little more pedestrian friendly for the folks who are in this courtyard here. This is that dining cafe space that spills out on this space as well as onto a covered connection that explores the eastern part of town.
Will, you've hit about 15 minutes.
Oh, sure. Okay. I think that might have been.
That's it.
That's it.
Stop sign at 9.
So, love to hear your comments, questions.
Is there any public comment?
All right,
Go ahead.
there are staff comments. There are also. All right, just a few notes, which I think have actually been emphasized in your presentation, but since it's a new project and it's a big project, I always like to have a few notes. First one is that the proposed is comparable to the neighboring dental school in height and mass. The proposed successfully blends the languages of the dental school and the new to-be-built College of Health Professions building on President Street, as well as the colors that have been part of the identity of the MUSC campus. A clear, easily identifiable entry gives hierarchy to the B Street facade and reflects, while not mimicking its neighbor, positioned in such a way to properly serve as a gateway to campus. The facade openings give vertical proportions to the design as guided by the Bay Area principles. Okay, the staff comments. The contemporary language of the building offers contrast to the historic masonry wall, allowing it to be showcased. Even so, alterations or disturbances to the wall shall be kept to a minimum as proposed. Applicant should describe how other non-original openings to the wall were handled. For example, does the pier design allude to original openings or to new openings? You sort of did touch on that when you were talking about wall repairs. 2, terracotta and brick are traditional materials. However, on this building, they are placed and expressed in a very untraditional fashion. Because the building is clearly contemporary, staff is comfortable with their proposed use and orientation. It seeks to understand how these materials will wrap corners and edges and into openings. It's also important to understand the offset between wall planes and fenestration. For a building of this size, 8 inches seems like a minimum. And then the following comments do not pertain to height, scale, and mass, but to issues that could be incorporated at preliminary. So I just want to make that clear. For preliminary, at the first floor suggests offsets between the terracotta and brick, which appear to be in the same plane, such as facing the College of Health Professions. For preliminary, applicant to describe the design of the vertical awning connector at the main entry canopy, which consists of round elements. Is the round element used elsewhere as part of the entry canopy or at the roof at terraces, and are these visible? For preliminary, the ground floor at the east and west facades provides less interest. Continue to study how articulation at these areas would benefit the project and reduce the scale of the ground floor. For preliminary, suggest study of the detailing for how the terracotta terminates into the railing at the 4th floor terrace over the main entry. And then last, the board should be reminded that there is a waiver being requested here for additional height at the ground floor. For ordinance, a non-residential floor maxes out at 20 feet and the BAR may grant a waiver of up to 25 feet. And then our recommendation is conceptual approval with board and staff comments.
Any response, questions?
No, we appreciate the comments.
Yeah, very thoughtful.
Thank you. Board discussion.
I will start. This is a super minor, this is the most minor comment you're gonna have. On the historic wall, I noticed that wherever you're putting it open, you're adding pilasters, which is also thin. I was looking to, are there any historic pilasters that extend up beyond the height of the wall?
Yes, they extend up like a course and then they have the wash.
Okay, so historically, they've always done that. I just want to make sure you weren't adding. So super minor, like I said. Well, I mean, I'll start. I think the design is really strong and it definitely goes well with what's there. And I appreciate how I didn't really pick up on it until you showed me that elevation of how the fenestration sort of matches the rhythm elsewhere, sort of down President Street. And I really like the materials. I love the terracotta and I like the gray brick. The patterns is really interesting. My only comments in there more just for next time, and because it's sort of the next developmental thing, is that east facade. When you come in, can you go to sheet 40 or whatever, 40 there?
Yeah, the back on. He's driving. Oh.
So one more. So, yeah. So right there at the corner, I know y'all are calling that the ceremonial entry, but I gotta think a lot of people are gonna be walking on that north-south axis right there, from B to internal to the campus. And it happens to be where you have to have the bathrooms, but that's just a big blank wall right there. And it's at the front. And so I don't know, I'm sure you can come up with something that works with the rest of the bunch. Just give us an interest on what you have to have glass. And then also I just think that one facade out of all of them is probably the least cohesive. Partially because of that, but then also when you look at that pure elevation, there's interesting stuff going on, but it just doesn't quite seem to gel.
You're talking about the east elevation.
Yeah, yeah. And again, I don't know how much you're really gonna see, but I just think it's important. Compared to the rest of the facades, you've got all these elements that kind of work together. This one, that one, quite, it's just not there yet.
Right.
Not enough to defer, it's just, next month. Sure. And I agree with the city's comments that to me, where you make these material changes, a little bit more of a planner change, if you could do it, would be good. I definitely appreciate, it's not in our purview with the trees. That's really nice to see the agencies do that. So anyway, I think certainly for conceptual design, it's very appropriate high school pass.
Yeah, designing context, it makes a ton of sense to me, and then the gateway entrance as well. My only question or concern is based on materiality of the brick and the terracotta, but that's up for preliminary anyway. I don't need to worry about that now. But I would like to see that in context in a rendering with the other buildings around it. If that makes sense.
Sure.
But that's all.
First of all, I think it's really successful approach to fill up that corner and meet two streets, this and President. I also, over the years, MUSC campus was developed with all these different buildings, different architectural approach, language, and I think this is really the first where we see continuity and created assembly and identity for the campus. So the details, the elements are not mimicking each other from the previous architectural buildings like dental, like on President Street, but they complementing in many ways, and without kind of intrusion. I can pick up on the corner what Eddie was saying at the entrance, at the temple entrance, but it's also on the corner of B and President. It's also really solid there. You know, across the street, we have that garage, which corner is cut off. I guess the wall would not let you do it, but is there any way of lighting up that corner? Well, other than that, I support all the staff comments. To see this project go in that direction.
Thanks, Linda. And I have two things. One is your drainage systems for your decks. When they're done, all of that will be done internally. And your transitions on your handicap accesses both off of B Street and President Street. You kind of go in through the opening and then it's hidden behind the walls as you go up. That's nicely done. Those are my only comments. Is there a motion?
All right, I'll make one. Conceptual approval with board and staff comments. And again, just look at that corner. I don't think it has to have glass or anything. I just think it ought to just be something that's studied. I'm in support. That includes the additional height for the first floor.
Do we add the corner at the auditorium as well?
Well, I don't know that I understood. I don't know that they
It's a
can
staff
change.
comment as well.
Where was, I'm sorry, what was that? Yeah, I think it'd be worth, I mean, it's worth studying. It doesn't, yeah.
I think from the ground you will feel
Yeah.
much more kind of relative position.
Yeah, I agree.
At the intersection, and that's another thing is creating street intersections and hooking buildings, talking it to each other, and it is urbanly important.
So part of our challenge is that corner that we've been working hard on is that, to your point, this is where that terrace active learning theater is, and this is sort of the main one. We have projection screens, projection walls there, and they might not just be screens, they might be LED on a solid wall. So we're trying to not put fake windows in. That's kind of why we came up with this idea of sort of a terracotta screen there. So you're letting natural light in where you can. But that's
There are other means than glass. You know, you can,
Yeah.
So Annie and Linda, I'm allowing those to be covered under board comments.
Yes.
Okay, so the motion is for conceptual approval of board and staff comments, including the additional height. Okay. Is there a second? Sadie, second. Eddie, how do you go?
Yea in favor.
Sadie,
Yay in favor.
Luda? And I vote yea in favor, so thank you.
Thank you.
Next one.
is it made in house?
Item number 5.
Okay, item number 5 is 35 and 37 Taylor Street. This is a category 4 building in the French Quarter. The district is 3.5, and we're in the Golden Historic District. Applicant is requesting conceptual approval for the rehabilitation of, in addition to an existing 3-story masonry structure for ground level retail, 8 condominiums, and a rooftop. The building in question is in the red box there. It has 2 roofs, so you're seeing what looks like 2 parts. Building today, and this is taken separately, and then it's fine, keep going. This is the 1-story structure at the back. This is on the south side. This is from the northeast corner. North elevation. West. Okay, we're ready.
Thank you, Chair.
Good afternoon. I'm Jimmy Walker with Goodwin Mills and Kaywood. And also we have here David Kreider with HBA, who is actually the applicant, an architect of record. We've been working together on this building for quite some time, and fortunately we had a very good report on the history of this building, which when you look at the pictures, you can kind of tell there's been a lot of different things going on with this building over the years. And so I just want to start off, kind of give you a bullet point overview from building began to where it is today. Then David's going to go over the proposed design. So this building, the front 3 floors, the whole building was a 3-story building in the beginning. I guess the eastern side was a full 3-story building. It was constructed in 1820, and around 1833, that's when the 1-story warehouse buildings were constructed on the west side of the property, which you saw along that sort of parking lot between the buildings there. 1886, the building, 1886, the great earthquake. Top left there, you can see the building was heavily damaged. And at that time, lost the walls on the south and east side, but that's where the 3rd floor on the north side of the building on Frelo Street and the gable roof, that half of the building was lost and never built back. So that's why you see the building in the condition it is now. The insurance maps all show that up until that point it was a 3-story building. Also, apparently in 1952, there was a pretty big fire in the warehouse on the north side, the 1-story section. So if you notice, half of that roof on the warehouse is sloped, half of it's flat. And so the flat portion apparently was destroyed by fire and replaced with the flat roof that you see. 1969, the rest of the original gable roof was removed. That was about the time the building was renovated and turned into what was known as the Colony House. The north wall had to also be, the third floor had to be reconstructed for structural reasons. So the roof came off at that point and was never put back. So that's when the full gable roof was lost. 1994, building most of us know, it was turned into the Harbor Club. And then the roof structure, the roof terrace, the covered roof terrace was built around 2001. So that sort of just shows you that the building's been through a lot of changes. Most of the initial years it was warehouse space and mercantile type spaces. It was broken up into originally 4 individual shops. And it's all been opened up into one. Why don't you go through the.
Thank you, Jimmy. As Jimmy said, David Kreider with Archer and Wonder Architecture. This is existing historic report was very useful to us. And the image of what the building was after the earthquake inspired us to do what we are proposing as a design. Maybe there was something unique about that. And as Jimmy said, you can tell a lot of what kind of appear to be haphazard renovations, removals, additions have occurred since that time. So there's the existing photographs. This is the existing site plan. Going through quick the elevations. Essentially, what you see in pink is what we'd like to remove from the building. So that rebuilt terrace and the pergola. Take the canopy off the front entry. We'll take the fire escape off. We're going to put in some new windows, which you'll see in a minute. And then essentially the whole back half of that one-story addition is to come off as well. So the plan is to turn this into a first floor retail, and then upper floors condos, total of 8 condos on 3 floors. The gable form is what we took inspiration from and are proposing that a gable form would go back in its place, not a true reconstruction, but an adaptive reuse of the space. We would like to also mimic that 3rd floor that you see in this portion here back to what we assume or have worked out in our heads what it might have or probably was like before the earthquake. And then we'd like to do an addition off the back that is inset from the existing 1-story construction out of a material that is modern and differentiated from the existing masonry that you see there today. You'll notice on this north facade, it's cleaned up. We're going to repair these, add a window at the corner because this top floor will be for condo usage. So to make a usable condo space, we need a window. And then we'll similarly, on the north facade, do the same. Mimic what we think was probably there, as the historic report notes that there was a way of bringing material into the building through a hoist. So there's evidence of that it was could have been done on both sides. The rear elevation is intended to be simple. We'll do some alignment of our new windows with the existing. We'll leave this back wall as it is, as we believe it was always that case. Again, modern materials on the back to differentiate from what you see that's there today. And you'll notice that it will fit within the context, hopefully, of the space. Though it is larger, it was, as you saw in the historic photographs, a larger building to begin with. And a conceptual 3-dimensional view from the street level. That's Gendron and Prelo there. And then an overall look at what the back would be. That terrace would be, hasn't been determined if it's just the top condo folks or if it gets to be an amenity for all the condos, but it will be a quiet terrace up on the top as an amenity to some of the residents. Questions, comments?
So you don't know yet what those materials would be on the back?
On the back, we haven't determined what the materials will be yet. We've been talking about a couple, but haven't settled on anything in particular.
So that entire, was that west facade? we don't know what that material is.
That's right. We've been mostly wrestling with form, and really that's presented here for discussion, the form of both this addition and the gable. It will likely be unobtrusive in its visual.
Well, just that affects the scale, so it's hard to know.
That's true.
And then I was just curious, in the historic research, my guess is those windows aren't that old, but maybe they are. Do you know if that light cut is what was original? Did the Preservation Society know that? Is it in the?
Are you talking about this addition or on the?
Just curious, because I'm assuming you're gonna go back with new windows to match, because they're all in terrible shape. I was just wondering if they really were, whatever that is, 12 over 12.
So,
That seems
Some
odd.
historic photos for the.
so there's a firewall that ran east-west
Right.
that we found, and it appeared that the windows on the upper floors on the north side of that were of a different size than the ones on the south side in the research.
Yeah, well, my question was, so you don't know?
If you look at that top right photo of the north side, it had arched windows on the second level at one point, so things have
So are there
changed.
any other questions? Is it public comment?
Conservation Society of Charleston. We appreciate the applicant reaching out to us on this project. We are glad to see new life brought back to this long vacant historic building and supportive of efforts to rehabilitate the structure and address deferred maintenance issues. We also appreciate the historic research report that outlines the building's evolution over time. However, we are concerned the plans appear to represent a reconstruction approach to reflect the building's pre-1886 condition. If this approach is to be taken, the Secretary of the Interior Standards for Reconstruction should be the benchmark reference, and currently we do not feel these are being met. Specifically, these standards encourage reconstruction of non-surviving elements using physical and documentary evidence with minimal conjecture to enhance the public's understanding of the historical nature of the property. There is very little evidence of what the building looked like before the earthquake, but available historic photographs make it clear that features such as the dormers were not present. And a much more detailed analysis should be done to show that the design is an authentic reconstruction without conjecture. Another major issue in conflict with reconstructing the gabled third floor is the proposed rear addition. The massing of the addition, and particularly the roof deck structure, engulf and obscure the gable form, which would be essential to read as part of the public's experience of the historic reconstruction. Alternatively, designing the project through the lens of the Secretary of the Interior Standards for Rehabilitation, which encourages compatible but differentiated additions, may allow for more flexibility. And we would recommend going this route to avoid creating a false historic appearance. In this vein, we do see the possibility for an addition in this area, but feel it should be better subordinated and disengaged from the historic building, as well as more clearly differentiated as new construction. So due to the degree of restudy needed, we feel the project should be deferred. Thank you.
Scott Benedict, I'm actually the broker representing the building, and Eddie, we spoke a long time ago when I was a contractor. I've worked on this building since, 1992, when it started being restored and converted to the Harbor Club. Those windows were 12 over 12s. We'd taken out the original ones and replaced them. And as far as the rehabilitation, I think that's a good use for it. I mean, obviously, we've got to convert it into a modern use. It was a warehouse, but if anything, this is going to be closest to what was there originally. As far as an addition, that's always allowed, as long as it's able to be held, it will be differentiated from the original. And there's buildings all over the city doing that addition for modern use. So, you know, we'd really like to see it converted so it can be utilized again. It's been vacant for over 2 years now, and hopefully these guys will do a superb job. So I appreciate the time and hopefully we can get this worked out.
Thanks, sir. Any other comments? Jordan?
All right. Just a few notes. And this was picked up in the timeline, but the major alterations occurred to this building in 1886 and 1969. The first was the loss of the third floor and adjoining gable roof on the northern half of the taller portion because of the 1886 earthquake. The second big change occurred in 1968 or 1969 when the gable over the third floor at the southern half of the taller structure was removed. This is believed to be due to a rebuild of the third floor for structural reasons and for, quote, a more pleasing arrangement from an architectural standpoint. The brick cornice, which appears at the roof lines above the second and third stories, may have been added at this time. All right. Staff comment. Proposed is an intensive expansion of a building which has a complex history. At this time, the application is utilizing both reconstruction and rehabilitation techniques, both of which are outlined in the Secretary of the Interior Standards as treatments for historic buildings. A reconstruction would be the seamless rebuilding of the third floor and gable roofs and could result in a cleaner composition. An adaptive reuse or rehabilitation can result in a more complex composition, but would preserve the history of the building. There are many elements within the proposed which we will look at individually before looking at the project as a whole. We'll break these down. The third floor and adjoining gable at the north. The third floor at the northern half of the primary portion was lost in 1886, and the building's appearance has been without it for almost 140 years. Reconstruction of a third floor with gable would make this building appear as it did for some of Charleston's period of significance. However, for most of the lifetime of this building has been without the third floor at the north end, and a seamless reconstruction as proposed would eliminate a large part of the building's history. As part of a rehabilitation, a third floor which is subordinate and differentiated could be studied. This would preserve the cornice line which is visible on the existing. The next element is the gable over the existing third floor. This gable was removed in the 1960s, not that long ago by Charleston standards. Replacing the gable over this portion could be appropriate. The next part is the two-story addition over the one-story warehouses. The warehouses were supporting structures for the main body, which is the taller portion facing Prelude. There is opportunity here to accommodate some infill density in an area that consists of 3- and 4-story buildings. An addition that is subordinate and sympathetic to the 2- and 3-story form could work. The architectural language needs to be revised to differentiate from the existing. Perhaps something that is lighter in perception could work. Additional setback from the north and south ends would also benefit the project. The dormers facing Prelude. As part of making the space in the gable roof form habitable, dormers could be added as long as their language is designed to reflect the new addition. However, these would be considered new character-defining elements and would not be appropriate for a reconstruction, as there is no evidence that they ever existed. The west dormer to the new roof deck. The size of the extended dormer at the west is overwhelming in size and needs to be reduced and minimized. Fenestration at south and north elevations of existing. Restoring these facades to the previous appearance would provide interest and improvement. Because of the program, a rehabilitation is the right direction, and staff is supportive of an adaptive reuse that would allow the original forms to continue to be expressed. This would require the minimization of some areas and a creative differentiation of the new portions. And we are recommending the deferral as proposed. There's a lot to think through, so.
Like to respond to the comments? Thank you very much. Any other questions for you? Then comments, questions, discussion?
Well, I appreciate the thorough assessment the staff gave this, and also representatives from the Preservation Society. I agree. Unfortunately, you've backed into a mixed message, and the app strategy is completely appropriate, and I'm sure that it can be made to meet the program. The only other thing that I will say atop what's already been said is that stacking new walls atop of old.
Just to add to that a little bit, so I think you've got 2 directions to go. Either you completely restore it, and you do it exactly right, which means you can't have dormers, or you let it be a new addition with the old building there, and there's a clear difference between the 2. I wouldn't vote for that one. It bothers me when I see, like on the northern facade, you putting in a blind, enclosed, open, rebuilding an enclosed opening doesn't make sense to me. Go ahead and open it up, or whatever. So I think you gotta figure out which direction to go. That's why I was asking, is it really the windows, how they used to be at the ground level? It's all gonna be retail. Those used to be open arches with big doors. They never had little teeny panes in them, so why not have that be big sheets of glass, like it's just around the corner. That's been done. So I just think you gotta look at it with the project. To me, you can get your program in there easily. So that's not the issue, it's just how you're kind of going about it. So either you go full restoration or not. Regardless of all of that, and I know you're just trying to get some kind of feel from the board, but it's really hard for us to make, I can't recommend approval or motion for approval on an entire facade that's gonna be very visible when I don't know the materials. I mean, I just swing any kind of way, So I would, come back with materials. Also, please, one of the requirements is to show existing and proposed on the same sheet. And I like how you have the elevations enlarged on the next sheet because you need to see that, but it's really confusing. I'm an architect, it took me a minute to figure it all out. It's a complicated one, so the more you can do that, it will help. So I agree with what Jay said and what the city said. I don't think it's quite ready, but I think the good news is you've got lots of opportunity.
I think that restoration will be very, very tough because what you're restoring to specifically is there's not enough basis for that. So and overall it doesn't look right altogether. And definitely to me, I don't think we have any examples of more civic buildings or warehouses which had this type of dormers altogether. So, I'm in support of all the comments and that is in order.
I agree with all my colleagues.
Well, I think you see where this is going.
I studied this a little bit, and Sanborn map shows 3 stories just after the earthquake, but it's unclear did that roof actually extend over that building to the north or not. I'm not sure. It's surprising to see a warehouse like that with having a slope roof and parapet walls. I don't know the answer to that, but there were enough questions when I looked at it. I think a little more research might need to be done, and if I missed something in the research, that's my fault. The age of the building is 1820s. Question is, was this were these 2 separate structures? And one was built and another one added to it, because you've got a substantial brick wall according to the sandboards that went from subsurface to the roof, almost 6 windows on either side. So it was right in the middle. Windows on the north side were of a different shape according to the photos that I've seen. I hadn't validated that, but they were of a different size. And you see in some of the earthquake shots, some of the lifting devices above the larger doors that opened up on both the first and the second floor. It seems that you're picking from several different periods to how you're going to choose to do the project. And that includes your own, which is adding the dormers on top of the building. Otherwise, I agree with the comments. If there are no other comments or questions, is there a motion?
Motion to defer with board and staff comments.
I'll second that.
Okay, Stephen has made a motion to defer with board and staff comments, and Jay seconded. Eddie?
Yeah, in favor.
Any in favor, Steve?
Yeah, in favor.
Rita?
Yeah, in favor.
I vote yea in favor also. Thanks, sir.
6 is Iron Forge Alley, lots 13 and 14. The addresses are 22 and 24 Iron Forge Alley. This is new construction on the east side, Lake District 2.5 to 3, and in the Old City District. The applicant is requesting preliminary approval for new construction of an attached single-family residences. Remember, Iron Forge is interior to the block. And this is the plat showing the exact lots we'll be looking at. Some images from the surrounding streets.
Hi, my name is Bruce Jarrett. I'm the architect of this project, Synchronicity. We are here this evening to request preliminary approval for the last two structures at this development. It's an attached residential structure on two lots, lot 13 and lot 14, at the extreme left of the site. I'll back up a tiny bit. I don't know that everyone was here when we went through for conceptual. This structure is, as I mentioned, the last one on the site. This is a PUD, which includes 14 new attached and detached fee simple residential structures on the interior of the site, and the renovation, rehabilitation of 5 buildings, one on Nassau, 4 on Nassau, one on Hanover, one of those at Third. You'll see that one going forward. This is new construction, infill, and also there's a building at lot 8 and 9, which is in the lower right-hand corner of the new. So it's right here, where this building it's similar in some ways to that, and it kind of works on the edge of the development. The last time we were here in front of the board, we got a couple comments on the conceptual design, and the best way to do this would be just to kind of bounce into the design and show how we respond to that. Effective comments, and we appreciate them. Skipping to sheet 201, I believe we covered a lot of ground from that one. Some of the comments had to do with the dormers on this building, a little bit of a technical concern between the top of our shed dormers and our main gable roof, and also a concern between the window sills in the dormer and the gable roof beneath. As a response to that, in the proposed design here, you can see that we kind of have to go back to the other sheet. We weren't able to get them scaled on the same page. You could go to the next page. I'm sorry, you were on it already. That is what we had before. So we have sort of reoriented the dormers a little bit to give us enough room at the top of this ridge to have that connection work better. And we've raised the sills up so that we were able to get a little bit more of a good weather type flashing condition of those windows. Bulk of the other comments from the board had to do with the rear elevation, which is the north elevation. So if we could mush through to 206, let's start with the before this time. So this is the design that we had before. This building is really visible only above the second floor, which is the first conditioned floor from the right of way. But we did receive some comments from the board that that this facade could be improved. So if we skip back one, please. So what we were able to do is go in and get some more fenestration along the back, increase the amount of windows in the dormers to flush those out a little bit, and then add some lights to the stairs as they go up. Just another window was added on the first floor, actually 2 on the first floor. So we feel like it's an improvement. It certainly is a little bit more active on the back. We were really cognizant of not wanting to stare into our neighbor's yard. We have a basement here, but we do feel that these windows are small and high on the wall, most of the light and appropriate. And finally, sorry, can we go to the elevation? 202. One of the other comments had to do with some brackets along the porches that are overhanging the parking bays, were they ornamental or were they being structural? We have also deleted those to give a little bit more volume. It's a good comment. It raises the impression of the height of that porch, which is nice, and gives it a little bit more of a clean look across the front. So those are the changes that have happened between now and the previous submittal. The building's roof systems will match the approved roof systems for all the other structures out there, which is a little NAC metal. The cladding for this building, we have in our submittal, I believe it's called out as 5/8 inch fiber cement. If it is available, our client builder would prefer to use that, with the understanding that if it is not available, we would use also full width kiln dried PT #1 wood, as we've been allowed to substitute in other buildings at this site. So the goal is to use the 5/8 thick fiber cement, but again, it's very, very difficult to find. So hoping we'd be allowed to see with either one of those or more or less in the evening. And the remainder of the elements on this are pretty similar to the other buildings in the design. Stop there.
Any public comment? Questions?
So on the, I'm looking at your fourth floor. Could you put more glass, more windows in the dormers if you wanted to?
The elevation on the fourth floor, which one though?
Well, if you go to your fourth floor plan, A104.
We actually asked that at the conceptual, you know.
Just, well, that'll be, I guess I'll get to my comment later. Just,
Yeah. Good, so we have 2 windows in that dormer now. Could we increase the amount of windows in that dormer element? Yes.
Luke, what page?
Oh, I'm sorry, we were on sheet 104. If you look to it's right here. So this was what we had originally, a single window in the dormer. This element here is behind the dormer. And so
I'm looking at bedroom 402.
I'm sorry.
Right?
Okay, looking towards the front.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
So, and it's a little deceiving because you're drawing the whole roof there.
Right.
But,
What's our elevation sheet?
Elevation should be 201.
yeah, so those top I'm just asking about the dormers
These ones
themselves.
up here?
Yeah.
What was it previously?
The same,
It's the same. It's just he changed sort of how it's trimmed down and where the sill's at, but you answered my question.
Yeah, we could, I mean, that's all one single room, and we were sort of felt that reducing the window count there might be the right play, but of course we love the big feedback.
Well, I'll have a comment. I'll ask you to say something.
Any other questions?
That beam at the porches, no, go back to that to one. The roof edge, it's very heavy, it's very unusual for
I'm sorry, I wasn't able to.
the beam here.
Above the columns.
That's huge. It's
Yeah.
kind of entablature almost.
I was gonna say the same thing. Look, if you go to your detail, if you just drop. Zero two.
Takes
You've got
away
a
from the
space,
porch.
top of the capitol, and you've got a beam, and you've got another free board or something that's like this big, and it could just be that big. It would look better. Let it bear. Anyway, well, you know what my comment's gonna be. I've got just my own problems, but dormers shouldn't have siding generally.
Mr. Miller, I'm sorry, I'll touch on that.
Oh,
I'll
I'm sorry.
touch on that. Let me
Okay,
touch
go
on
ahead.
that.
Introduce staff.
Let me introduce that for you.
Sorry, Luke.
You're hard, you're difficult to manage.
I am too.
You tell him over there.
You should have him out for a night and close him.
It's my fault because like you
See, I
said,
blame Luda.
yeah.
All right.
Sorry, Tori.
Just a few staff comments. The water table and apron below at the first floor level has been removed. Aside from Functional attributes, this is an important design element which helps to break up the larger flat planes. This is common to most residential architecture of this scale, and as it helps the building fit better into its context, it should be retained. The two windows on the larger dormers on the south elevation would benefit from a third to better fill the dormer as was suggested, and done with the smaller dormers on the north side. 3, the cladding noted as 5/8 inch minimum, the note with the kill drive, should read as kill drive after pressure treating or KDAP. Number 4, at the dormer on the north elevation, omit the narrow sliver of siding between the windows, pull the windows closer together, and use one shared 1x4 trim piece between them. Dormer should consist primarily of windows and trim pieces. There you go. And then while the light size and proportion is consistent, we recommend a grid using one vertical and one horizontal on the square windows at the north elevation. However, we would also defer to how other windows of this size and proportion are handled in the overall project on the other structures. Oh, and we're recommending final approval with board and staff comments with final review by staff before permit drawings.
Oh, no, that's a great comments. Thank you very much.
So Eddie, please go ahead.
Okay, sorry.
Let's talk about dormers.
All right, so yeah, I just got a pet peeve. It's but dormers generally don't have siding as a general rule. And so either make the dormers get smaller and you have 3 windows to go across, and the room just has like a little inset, or have 4 windows, whatever. So you just trim it all out. I would vote for that. Oh, but I did want to start. I think the design, very handsome. How everything's broken up. This is the first time I've seen it. I think it's really well done. So these are sort of nitpicky detail things, but the other thing is, I think the light cut of your French doors, those are almost horizontal. They're definitely square, whereas all your windows are vertical. So I would cut out some of those buttons so they'd be vertical, and then like Luda picked up on, I think just studying how you trimming out the porch, basically, because in pure elevation, it looks tall. It's going to look tall when you're standing there. I just think it'll work better with this little cantilever porch.
Yeah, the porches are pretty much built with dimensional lumber rather than LVL.
I just think you just set it down and it'll work out nice. But I think it's really, I like the piece in between. One more thing, and then I'll be quiet. The piece in between that you have all shiplap, you know, that window there, since you don't have any trim around the opening, you could treat that window with some kind of flush trim or something. That would be pretty nice.
Trim's disastrous.
Well, a different type of trim. Because it's, you know, it's a different siding type.
So Eddie, we're not ready for a motion yet. Anybody?
I will be back for 6 months. So I'm going to get all my statements in.
See, Luda?
Fine. Probably, I mean, it's such a small amount of details that I will support the final approval.
Okay, so I just, Luke, just one thing, sheet A205. Mine? Yes. So you gotta have the vents, there's no question about it, but this seems difficult to flash. The ones that are immediately adjacent to that window trim, just be really hard to install those right there and, you know, make those be watertight, just be hard to do.
Thank you, Dan.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Any further discussion, motion?
I'll make a motion for, where we at preliminary, final approval, final details of staff, board and staff comments.
I'll second
Preliminary?
that. Fine.
Final.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, fine.
Right, so Eddie made a motion and Jay seconded it for final approval with final details for staff with board staff time. Eddie?
Yeah, in favor.
Any opposed?
Yeah, in favor.
Jay?
Yeah, in favor.
And I vote yeah in favor.
Thanks
Thanks.
so much, y'all. I really appreciate it. The last time you'll see us on Reality Project. Jay, I believe you were there for the very first.
That was a lot of comments.
It's been nearly a decade.
Thank you so much. Y'all have a great one.
Thank you, Luke.
Yeah.
I blame the chair for letting it get out of order.
Hey,
What's that?
so do I.
What's that?
Good to see you. We shouldn't have had a big cup of coffee for him.
Yeah, I am. I'm like, oh wow, 6 o'clock.